the Thinking Tackle podcast.
To be done in the choruses a lot of the time, so and our bassist Jim couldn't sing for toffee, so I went for it. And
the bassist,
yeah,
sorry, yeah,
he's a lovely guy, like, you know, great musician, but he just couldn't sing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how it started, really, you know. And then I did the ska band, and I took whole tracks in that band, you know, like You're Wondering Now by the Specials, but that's more, like you're saying, more of a narrative vocal than a technically sung vocal. You know, you kind of get away with that.
That's it.
But I haven't got much of a range, so I can sing certain things and not others. I can sing later Morrissey songs, but not the earlier ones, because his tone has changed. It's very high in the old days.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a bit richer now, isn't it?
Yeah, and arguably it's, why would you want to sing them now? It's all a bit controversial at the moment, isn't it, with him?
Yeah, and maybe. We're live. Simon Hartop, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. So we ask for a gift at the start of every podcast. What gift have you got for us, Si?
Well, it's not a particularly expensive gift, but it
doesn't matter.
Arguably as important to me as any fishing rod, if not more. It's always been one or the other. So I probably should have bought you a butt section and one drumstick, but that's what you got.
Thank you very much. Look at these. No, it's good to have a bit of variety, actually. Something a little bit different. We were commenting before that you...
they're a bit chopped.
Yeah, they're chopped, but it looks like they've been used a little bit. So
yeah. It's the style of the playing, mate.
Style of the playing.
Their police rehearsal band use. That's why they've been rim-shotted and all the wood's kind of a bit compressed around the middle.
Yeah. Stuart Copeland.
Indeed.
Yeah, a good drummer.
Amazing drummer.
So, Si, thanks for that. We'll put that up there, and it's good for all the other guests to be able to see something. Hopefully, people that come on, they watch this and they can see all the gifts being given, and hopefully by the in a year's time, we'll have a full studio full of little mementos. So,
good stuff.
Yeah. So people that don't know you, you are a very busy man.
I am a busy man.
Yeah.
Get busier. Don't know how that works. But
I know. As we get older, we get busier, maybe. But so people that don't know you, you're, as well as being a really keen carp angler, you're an editor. You're a school teacher. You're a semi-professional drummer. I've seen pictures of mountain bikes and stuff.
Yeah.
So how do you maintain a balance, Si, with all of that?
Well, this year, because I joined that rock band a year ago in July, I had to make that decision that if I was going to do that, it had to take most of my time. So the fishing took a bit of a back seat, did a bit of guiding on the river, but my own personal fishing, you can't do two together unless you're just in a luxurious position to, you know, to be financially stable enough to do that, you know, so it has to be one. And plus you need the focus, you know, with little time, you have to have enough focus on the thing that you've chosen to concentrate on.
Yeah. So do you departmentalize a little bit and try and do one thing at a time and sacrifice one thing for the other?
Yeah,
a little bit as well?
I do. And the thing that helps having different passions is that your brain or your headspace is always more into one or the other.
Right.
So it can get confusing if you start to do a bit of fishing whilst you've got a rehearsal in a couple of days. You could end up making a phone call because I don't feel too good today, like, you know, when really all you're doing is having another night on the bank or whatever. You know? Yeah. So you can't do that. You have to prioritise.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was listening to, I was talking to you. I'm having some lessons again soon, in music lessons, and the guy in his email said to me that adults can learn as quickly as children, but children have just got more headspace to be able to have the capacity to be able to focus more. Is that something that you would kind of agree on, with seeing we as adults, we think that we can't learn in our 40s or whatever, but
I definitely don't think that's true, but I think by you know the sheer nature of being an adult, you do have a lot more pressing things in your life, like, you know, paying the bills and relationships, jobs, whatever it is, which you don't necessarily have as a young kid. So everything's mapped out for you. You know, I get it that, you know, that I can't, no matter what I say to the kids at school about make the most of it while it lasts, they never understand that until it's gone. You don't.
No.
So I tend not to say it, you know, but I do say, look, you know, I know you don't believe me, but
Yeah.
you've only got 2 years left, or you've only got a year left. It's going to get a lot harder when you get out there. But I don't say it in that kind of way that it's said to me. I try and sort of do it as an advice thing. But, you know, I went back to my drum teacher 4 years ago, and there was a particular Latin pattern I just couldn't do at uni. I just couldn't get I don't know why, I just didn't work. And he had me doing it within an hour. And I think you naturally get better at things without necessarily noticing it.
Right.
And then you just end up doing something that to you know, well, which you kind of you can't believe it was ever any problem. It just seems something just seems to click, and it works. So you can always learn as you get older. It's just having the time to commit to that.
So children have just got a little bit more time potentially to be able to dedicate themselves to something.
Well, when you're young, a week is a month, and a month is a year. And
well, we're talking about school and
a week
stuff.
To me now is like 5 minutes.
I
you know,
know,
this
it's
week's
crazy.
just gone
so
quick.
Yeah, because you've just gone back into teaching. So you took a bit of time out of that.
I did.
We'll talk about some of your guiding stuff later. But so how do you find it getting back into school teaching? Is that
It's a bit of a culture shock, I've got to be honest. I mean,
because you're an art teacher, Si, aren't you?
Yeah, and design.
Design.
Mostly design. So I came out of that 3.5 years ago after going so far to becoming a curriculum leader. So I had a big department with 6 subjects within art. So it was art, photography, graphics, product design, textiles and catering. So it's a big department. And the pressures were huge with quite a heavy timetable. So at that time we were in the midst of doing Subsurface as well. So we'd, you know, all these things, trying to go fishing and not necessarily playing a lot at that time, doing a bit with the ska band, but we knew the songs, so we didn't really rehearse. You know, if we got a gig, we'd go and we'd do it. But it became such a huge pressure in the end that I needed to change. So I went and bought a house in Leicestershire, a bit of the Homes Under the Hammer type of thing. Did that, sold it, went and bought another one in the middle of the countryside near Birmingham and did the same thing again. Then unfortunately my dad got quite ill with cancer, so I made the decision last year to buy his house because he had a right to buy scheme open to him, which meant that I had to make the decision to, if I was going to do that, it was going to put my business on hold, but it meant that I'd probably have to go back to school. So I did some supply for a while, which was quite interesting because I didn't realise that it was fully geared towards primary school. So I eventually passed all the checks and everything, and the guy said, "You're okay with year 1 to 6?" And I was like, "Hey."
Yeah.
You know, so I went into my wife's school where an old college mate of mine is assistant head.
She's a head teacher, isn't she?
She's deputy.
Deputy head,
yeah,
right.
So that was a bit of a stigma, thinking, I work for my wife, you know.
Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, a bit weird. But my friend Sarah just completely stitched me up on the first day and said, "You can teach RE this afternoon to year 4. Like, what? You know, but they have learning supports in all of their classrooms, luckily in primary on the whole. So you've always got someone who can Google something if you're not sure. Yeah. And I ended up working there on and off for about a year, and I really enjoyed it. And then the chance came up to teach design again in a free school, which I didn't really know a lot about. And I went along and quite liked it. It has got its challenges in terms of space, but they've got a new build come in, and to be fair, it's been quite nice to get back in and sort of you know, teach my specialism, but do what I did for quite a long time without the added pressures of leadership.
Yeah. Do you find it, I mean, obviously you can be a little bit more advanced with secondary school kids as well. I mean, is that something that you would prefer to do anyway, you know?
To a certain extent. I mean, the flip side is that when you have the little ones, they're very kind of attentive and wide-eyed still, and can't do enough for you. So that side of it's nice because they're super keen. When they get a bit older, it's different, of course, you know, especially year 9, the devil years we used to call it, you know, because there's all sorts of things going on. And but yeah, I have to say, I've got 2 year 11 groups at the moment, and that's a challenge going into that age as a stranger. You know, it takes time for them to trust you, type of thing, but they're quite receptive, I have to say, so far. Where it is certainly not in one of the most downtrodden areas I've ever taught in that area, and it's near the river, so I'm never too far away from, you know, I go past the Thames in the morning on the way, and even though it's only for like 500 yards, it sort of keeps your headspace in quite a positive.
You keep that little fix for a while, don't you?
You do.
But you were saying with kids, isn't it? It's like having parents. If you've got one set of parents, it gives you a bit of stability, doesn't it? And you hopefully, you're probably, well, I'm not saying hopefully, but I mean, you tend to be a little bit more grounded. If you're changing school teachers regularly, it's the same for people teaching,
Absolutely
at school,
right.
isn't it?
Yeah, my year 10 shooter group are interesting, and but they're good kids. They've had 3 different tutors over, I think, the last couple of years. So yeah, they're always a bit suspicious, when they see a new person. But
you're a cool teacher, Si, aren't you?
I don't know. I hope so. I've been showing them the fishing stuff, and the band stuff. Because
we said before that it's far cooler to be a drummer.
Well, it humanises you as well, doesn't it? Because they like their music. They like, some of them like their fishing.
Yeah.
It's the area that we're in. There's always anglers, because of the parks and the river.
Yeah.
So it's just a good, quick sort of way of getting some of them on side, and then hopefully, if you're doing your job properly, the rest will follow.
If you can get your pupils on side, because we know what it was like being at school, don't we? My old music teacher, horrible man. He was such an old-fashioned, classically sort of trained teacher. I remember once in class, we had to do singing scales, and a pretty cruel thing for the, for people that didn't want to sing to have to do.
Yeah, pretty horrendous.
And I remember he went through the whole class and he got to my name, and the first time I stood up and I just started laughing. I went to sing La, and I like the first note I started laughing. He said, "Sit down," and he was grading us out of 5 or something. And he said, "Sit down," and he said 1 or whatever. Oh, okay, I sat down. Then we had to do it twice. The second time I stood up and I thought I sang that scale perfectly in key, and he went, 2, sit down. And the class all looked at me and went, oh, no, it was better than that. And after that I thought, you've lost my respect, even as like a 12-year-old.
It's amazing how it's changed immeasurably, thank goodness, it really has. Some ways not for the best, but other ways definitely for the better. But I think by the pure token that you remember that, and you wouldn't remember what toys you owned or what clothes you were wearing at the time, shows that it can mentally scar you forever.
Yeah,
those kind of comments. So it is good that the attitude of professionals has changed for the better towards how you deal with children, because we all have memories of how you were spoken to at that age, and if it hurts your feelings, you never lose that.
It doesn't, and it can really damage your self-esteem as well. And I ended up getting back into music. Well, I got into music probably when I was about 18 years old. And but yeah, that always stands out. Those teachers, they have a negative effect on you, or they can inspire you to do more.
Yes.
So you live. I think you live in a great part of London. Actually, if I was going to live in London, that's where I would want to live, because you live near Twickenham, don't you? Is it Richmond?
Richmond and Twickenham, right between the two.
Right on the two. And you've got the river and everything. So how did you end up coming to live there? Because I know that you're not from there originally.
So I came to do a music and art degree in some time ago, and the thing that really struck me was that the Thames was on the front cover of the prospectus.
Nothing to do with.
And luckily it had a course that would look quite good as well.
Yeah.
So, I didn't drive at that time. Everything was bicycle, and it was when I got to London, but the accessibility of the Park Lakes plus the Thames and the Colne Valley was a lot more easy than it was as a Midlander. Most of our good fisheries were 10 miles away. So we was fit as fiddles because we cycled everywhere. But it was always a challenge to find anything over £25 in terms of carp. It was all relative to us though, and I'm glad that was the case, because you don't get you don't get ruined by extortionate weight gains. A £2 roach is still a big fish, a £20 pike's still a big fish, but a £20 carp's still a big fish to me, because that's what I grew up with, that kind of aesthetic and that aspect to it. You were doing well if you had a £20 carp pretty much right up to the mid-90s from the Midlands, apart from the hyper-expensive syndicates that started to come up at that time. So it was good to get to a place where I potentially had fish that were a lot bigger, but also pretty quiet fisheries as well at that time.
Yeah.
Particularly the river.
Yeah, it was a great era as well, wasn't it? I mean, our sort of age group as well. It's like what you were saying about, size of fish. And we've still got that perspective on things now, haven't we? Whereas you can lose that a little bit. So it's still nice that you can keep that. But I've read somewhere as well. I heard you say that the has the spirit of fishing been lost forever? Do you remember saying that?
That might have been on a film I did a few years ago, perhaps.
Right.
I think this is one of the reasons why we wanted to do Subsurface, because it had become too commercially driven. I think, there was a time where it annoyed me how many product adverts were in carp fishing magazines, because I just wanted to read the stories. But I understand that people had to sell that in order to produce the magazine, in hindsight. But then it got to a point where all I looked at was the product adverts, because there was nothing in them that really kind of inspired me to do it. And that's not a slur on anyone that was writing those articles. It just became quite repetitive, I think. And Sub was really about kind of trying to put that feeling you used to get when you went to get big carp, or when it wasn't so readily available. I suppose it was more special. It
was. You get the impression of the first edition when that came out as well. I mean, it's presented completely differently. You do that with Gaz, don't you? It was even the pictures, they were a little bit fadey and a little bit more carpy, and it just it probably appealed to our type of angler possibly more. Do you find that it's got a general appeal, Subsurface magazine?
I think it's got a lot more of a general appeal than I thought it would. I think Gaz would say the same. I don't think Gaz ever really thought it would be as well received as it was. It was just, we wanted to put something in for people who wanted to have that aspect that wasn't there anymore. So it was nice that it became a bit of a, I don't want to say like a thing, and what am I trying to say now? I've lost the word. We didn't want it to become like a fashionable part of carp fishing. We wanted it to
authentic.
We wanted people to look at it,
and just something original and its own.
People to kind of look at something that they had perhaps not seen before. It's just something that looked good as well.
How many years has that been going now?
Well, we did 3 journals over 3 years, and the last one, let's get this right now, I think was 2015. I think. Right. So, but the ethos is still there, and Gaz still does the clothing and the the sort of Instagram stuff. So as I say, the whole kind of ethos is still there.
So getting back to the original question, so do you still think the spirit of carp fishing's lost?
I don't think it's lost. I just think it got a bit buried. People still go because they feel that real sort of drive to get out there.
Do you think people's priorities have changed? Maybe
I think people are more
younger people.
They're more geared towards wanting to get out there and have instant success. I don't think the patience is there anymore. I don't think it needs to be years before you become successful. You know what you're doing, because there's so much stuff out there to help you now that shouldn't be the case. But I do find that it'd be a bit like if you saw like a marathon runner that had only ever run 20 mile, not quite got to the finish line. You'd want to really speak to someone that had, wouldn't you? So that's why with the British Carp Study Group, I'd spend a lot of time with Peter Springate and Dave Ball, those kind of real sort of lifetime seasoned anglers, because no matter how good you are or naturally gifted you are, you still can't replace experience.
It's like being a teacher. So the teacher, the pupils in your class, if they'd known that you'd done a week's training or whatever, it just wouldn't carry the same.
I think that's fair, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. You need to earn your.
You don't go into teaching earning 40-50 grand.
You earn your experience.
You have to earn it.
Yeah.
And I don't see any difference in sport. Or pastimes. I really don't.
I see
if you want to be involved in the industry, you want to go and do it for yourself, and you don't care about any of that, then fine, who cares?
Do you think there is more of an agenda with people nowadays to want to be sponsored or be part of the industry, and that's their that's their way of doing it. Whereas before we couldn't really. We
I
just
think
went fishing
so.
because we loved it, didn't we?
I think there was definitely a kind of apex of that about 4 years ago, maybe, where it just seemed that everybody was a consultant, you know, and I don't like that word unless you're consulting.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing to be a sponsored angler is a great thing, isn't it? But I think, you know, surely by the word consultant means that you're involved in developing stuff and
you're playing a part and
so I'm not exactly sure how far that goes with a lot of it, and I think it sort of leveled out, and but I think now the advent of Instagram has kind of brought it back again to a certain extent, it seems, you know.
Yeah, I see that kind of both ways. Definitely coming from, you know, we're a similar age, so coming from our era, you know, we're always a bit nostalgic, aren't we? I don't take enough pictures, or I don't spend enough time probably thinking about what my pictures are going to look like and wanting to chronicle my fishing, or not just my fishing, anything in my life. Whereas now with Instagram and stuff, I think it kind of brings a little bit more importance. And I think looking back now, I would have liked more of a. I know you keep lots of pictures, but I would have liked more of a portfolio of not just fishing, everything else I've done in my life. So in that respect,
absolutely,
Instagram's great. It's just finding that balance, really, isn't it?
Goes back to the quote Gaz used. I always say it because it's great, and that's, you know, it's good to have an end to a journey, but it's a journey that matters in the end.
Do you know what, I was going to mention that at the end of the podcast, side.
But, you know, that's what it means, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and I've spent much more time taking photographs of the adventure and not just man with fish. You know, I mean, how many pictures of man with fish do you want to see? You know, and that's the other thing, isn't it? When it becomes saturated, how can it be as interesting?
Yeah, I like mountains, and I like the Hillary standing on the top of Everest, and the story that you know, the heartache and the, you know, the sacrifice that those people had to make, and it's definitely the story that goes with it, not some person, you know, that's been helicoptered in and they only have to do a certain amount of it. You know, it's just not the.
I think as you get older as well, I don't know. I mean, I talk about this with friends of mine all the time. Is the you know, when you're looking through like page after page of 30s and, you know, whatever, it starts to become a bit weird, and you just sort of think, this is a bit weird, isn't it? Really, you know, all that time you spend to say you can have a picture with another fish. You know, I know that's kind of just not belittling it, but the older I get, it just seems to be more bizarre why we want that in our lives. You know, look at this, you know.
I know.
When all I really want is just to be out there. You know, that's what it is for me. It absolutely is about being outside. And, you know, we talked a bit earlier about the guiding. You know, my fishing suffered for it over the last year, personally, although it didn't feel like it had until I realised I hadn't caught anything. Right. Because I was essentially just bit guiding, you know, and I loved watching everyone fish and seeing them catch. It was great. It was really enjoyable. So I think, despite the fact that I've got a pretty empty photo album from the last 12 months, that absolutely proved to me that it was about just being on the bank, and I was enjoying watching someone else catch as much as I was myself. I felt like I'd been fishing when I hadn't. Right. So I think that's quite a bit of an acid test, isn't it? But
a question for you then. So do you think, I mean, if someone was given a big carp to hold, right, you can hold this and have a picture with it, you've got a choice, or actually have to fish for it and spend years and years. Do you think nowadays, with the way people are nowadays, would they rather just take the picture, or would they still want to go through the sacrifice?
It'd be an interesting survey to take.
It would, wouldn't it?
But I think it's a mindset, isn't it? That's why we've always had anglers that like to go to, you know, people just want to get a few bites, you know, or people that go and sit on the bank for months and in the hope they get a take in a year or whatever. There's always been that, hasn't there? But I think there's definitely a bit more of a populace that go towards the easier option. Result, you know. That's fine. I suppose in many ways it keeps it all.
It takes
keeps it better for us.
It does, I suppose it does. Yeah, it just seems to me it takes the emotion away from everything a little bit, and you know, just getting out there, because that experience of just being out there, Well, like I say, whatever it is you're doing, it's fantastic, that feel, isn't it? It's not just the euphoria of, all that quick buzz. It's the whole experience, which, if we could be carp fishing teachers, it would be trying to maybe
got to feel like, I don't know really. It's got to be personal. Personally, for me, I've got to feel like I've worked for something. Like the group book this year and all those things that took hours and hours and hours and hours of preparation and planning. Or the weeks and weeks of rehearsing before a tour, or the long evenings trying to find a big chub in a length of river that hasn't been fished for. Once you get something at the end of that, you definitely feel like you've achieved something. Yeah. It's nice to get a bit of luck along the way as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, of course.
You might strive for, God, I mean, like when Steve caught the Black Mirror, old Briggsy, 5 years. I know. And he turned up and had it in 5 minutes when he actually caught, and it's, but what a perfect end to what he'd been through,
So getting back to your childhood, so you grew up in the Midlands. I think your father was quite a big influence, wasn't he, on your fishing side?
Yeah, he was a fantastic angler in the old days. Interesting as a dad, but a brilliant angler.
Yeah. Interesting in what way?
Well, he brought us up basically, my sister and I. So it was an interesting childhood, not pretty colourful. But I didn't really see him during the 70s when he was with my mum. He was always out fishing or other things, But it was enough to create an interest, the fact that he wasn't around, and there's always that element of secrecy when you're a young kid is highly attractive, isn't it? You want to find out what's going on, and it's like your secret uncle who gives you a pound and gives you a wink and don't say anything, you feel like you're privy to something. And so when I started to go with my dad, I wasn't allowed to fish, but I was allowed to go, and that was a start. So it was good to just sort of skip along the banks while he fished a 3-hour match or whatnot, and be on the coach with all these guys and all the stories, and it's good times. It was exciting.
So like you say, so you were absorbing what your dad was doing, and somewhere subconsciously, you've been able to sort of put all that back together. And so when did your dad actually go fishing with you? And
the first time he took me was in 1976, big drought year, and we went to the Grand Union Canal in Oxford, or Banbury it was. And I still remember it. I still remember the type of sweets we got that day, and what I caught, a load of gudgeon, little daddy rough and stuff like that. We took some home in a bucket and put them in my grand's pond, and they lived for years, these gudgeon. So that was my first go. And then he used to bream fish at Coombe Abbey Lake near Coventry. It was a really well-known estate lake, and he'd have so many that you couldn't lift the net out at the end. He knew what he was doing. He took me to a country show one day, and there was a map of I think it was the Trent. There must have been about 140 pegs pinned on there, and you had to pin the biggest weight, and he just knew it. And he won me a Shakespeare match rod, and he just knew. He knew.
Did he? Right.
He was trained by Billy Lane, our first world champion. And my dad was, he's different kettle of fish altogether. He started carp fishing in the very early 70s, about 70, 71. And
so was he match fishing and carp fishing?
He started by match fishing, then he got into carp fishing, then specimen, and then went back to match fishing or float fishing, really,
So you kind of followed his pattern a little bit.
Pretty similarly, fortunately for me, everything I fished for was a lot bigger than it was when he was doing it. But the ethics or the ethos is still the same, He had a 19-pound mirror out of Witney Lake, which was the lake that Terry wrote about, the last of the Leanies.
I know the lake.
72, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it was a massive fish then.
Yep.
When he went back, he'd been there on his own for 3 months. So this is where some things don't change. So he'd been there on his own for 3 months, or maybe the season before, and he got back after he caught that, and the entire Carp Specimen group was down there.
I bet they were.
And then he carried on with it for a bit, but got a bit disheartened by the added interest. And
is that what drew him into specimen fishing?
Pardon?
Is that what drew him away from carp fishing into more specimen stuff, or?
Don't know really. I mean, he's always been interested in all species. He was never, you're always one species when you're fishing for him, aren't you? But generally speaking, he was into it all. So much like myself, when the autumn and the winter came round, he'd be chub fishing or pike fishing, or roach fishing.
Right.
So I'm glad that I've got that interest, because I can't imagine not doing that during the winter time. And even when I was a teenager, I hated carp fishing in the winter.
Right.
It's a lot easier now because you've got things you can do, haven't you, with your phones and whatever else. But then you were just, it got dark at 4:30 and you were just kind of, you might get your head down because you've got a disrupted sense of time and you think, I'll just go to sleep. But then you wake up 11 and bloody hell, I got another 8 out.
Yeah.
So I never enjoyed it. I just thought,
How old were you when you got into carp fishing?
15, I guess.
So you had a good apprenticeship, really.
Yeah, I was very lucky to be on waters where it was in its infancy.
Still in the Midlands?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mollinsmere, Packington Fishery, Somers Fishery. There was some very good anglers there, and not many. Everyone knew each other, whether you were on that fishery or the one 10 miles up the road, because there just weren't that many carp anglers. So it was kind of easy to learn because you didn't get too confused. You had two or three types of line to choose from, 3 types of hooks possibly, 2 types of reels, optonics, that became, Delkim conversions, and it was pretty finite, what was available. And I like that because you could concentrate on the watercraft then. You knew what you were using, and if you were skint like I was, it was a bag of toots or salmon supreme, and then a couple of years later it was big fish mix and black pepper oil, because we'd just about got enough to get some base mix.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We were very limited. We probably, I don't know whether we were frustrated or not, because it wasn't all available, but it taught you how to be, you had to think outside the box, didn't you, a little bit as well? But like you say, the focus of, fish, watercraft is so important, and it's probably the type of fishing that you do now. Is probably based quite a lot around watercraft.
100%, and I think that's something, again, it's acquired through it. You get better at it, don't you? And you also get lazy. I mean, the older I get, I do get a bit lazier. I always make a promise every new year that my resolution is to follow my instinct no matter what. And then I'll sort of set up somewhere and I think, I probably should have gone round there, and I just think, I'll stay here,
Yeah.
I'm happy to be there, do you know what I mean? And
I feel like that at times.
It's just natural, I think. When I was 16, I'd be running around like a, like a headless chicken, and even in my 20s and my 30s, be exactly the same.
You want to go fishing with Damien? That's a bit of an insight. He's got float rods set up. He's got all these different rods. He's got half a dozen things going on at the same time. It just doesn't stop. And I
admire that energy. I really do. I've always been quite laid back though. To be fair, it's just my nature.
Yeah.
I do if I'm happy doing what I'm doing,
absolutely.
I'm never disappointed in the result, because
you've done as much as you want to do.
I know that I'm happy to do what I'm doing, and I could have done other things, but it's just not me.
So you moved down to from the Midlands down to London for music school.
Yeah.
You started playing the drums at quite an early age.
I started when I was 6. But that was
bloody young.
Snare drum, marching band stuff. It was the only way I could get an instrument.
Well, how was that introduced to you?
Carnivals.
Just going to carnivals with your parent, with your dad? Or?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I still remember going through adults' legs to get to the front so I could see the marching bands. It was just the sound of it, the snare drums, just had to see it. And then when I going into primary school, and there was a shelf which was probably only as high as this table, but in hindsight it looked as high as this room, and there was 3 drums on top of that, and I only ever got them once, where someone got them down for me to have a look at, and it was just, I had my one eye on them and one eye on the blackboard the whole time I was there, really. And then I didn't play kit until I went to secondary school. And I just kind of, in my bedroom, I just had an idea about how it went, and the first thing I played when I got on the kit in secondary school was Ace of Spades by Motorhead.
Blimey. Hitting those drums hard weren't you?
Yeah, it just worked.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, okay,
So when you were watching those carnivals, so subconsciously you're taking in the rhythms and the patterns, drum patterns, or
I suppose it's just the sound of it. I just love the sound of it. I still do. If I see, every year we get a pipe band going by for the war commemorations in Isleworth, and I just love the sound of it. It's just the clattery noise of those people playing in unison. It's just really impressive, and it just does something to my heart.
So
if
fishing's your kind of salvation, so what's music? What does music mean to you? Is it deeper than that?
It's a really difficult question. I've always thought that they've been parallel all through my life, but they both mean so much to me. It's hard to quantify one or the other. I think the older I get, I would probably be leaning slightly further away from the instrument itself, but not away from music. Music's massively important to me. I can't not have music in my life for more than a couple of days. You know, I have to listen to something, and it's really hard to explain. It's guttural, really, you know. But yeah, in terms of my instrument, because it's such a physical instrument, that kind of age of laziness kind of gets to me a little bit sometimes, and because it's a hugely physical instrument. So do I want to go and sit with a little chair and a rod and a little bag of bait and fish for chub, or do I want to go and do 40 minutes on a drum kit playing Slipknot songs? It's always enjoyable, but I think the older I get, I'm more leaning towards the quick tip.
Well, you get your exercise though. I've always looked at drummers and think they've got to be very, very fit people, you know, compared to
ridiculous. You know, when you come off tour, you feel like you've been doing couch to 5k in like 10 days. You know?
I bet. Teo, have you got some pictures?
Yeah, I've just found the one you sent me earlier. It's brilliant. Give me 1 sec.
I love some of these pictures. The drumming ones are probably of more interest to me than the carp ones in some ways.
It's because they're different.
There it is.
Yeah.
Oh right, yeah. That was the last tour, and that was in Coventry. So it was, as you can expect, all my family were there, my sister, you know, and
that's a brilliant picture. That is.
Basic.
You're really giving it some there, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Part of that concentration really is I was never much of a face puller when I drummed, and then it's got that as I've got older. But sod it, you know.
Different instruments, different faces.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with this band because only 2 of us. So I've got my in-ear monitors in, which got a click track. So for those who don't know what that is, it's a metronome. So you're concentrating on hearing the time of the track plus the backing tracks.
Sorry, you're always listening to a click track when you play live?
With this particular band, yeah.
Is that normal?
It depends what you're doing. If you've got backing tracks for a drummer, it kind of is because it keeps the time.
Right.
If you're just relying on physical instruments, not so much, because it's going on around you. But if you're playing to anything that's digital, you can't afford to go either side of that. It just becomes a mess. So you need to train yourself to be able to do that in the first place, and then you need to be able to trust what you're doing outside of what's in your ears, because it is like having a bit like what we're doing now. You know, you've got your headphones on, but your voice is a bit muffled. It's exactly the same when you're playing your drums. So sometimes you can play them a little bit more loudly because you're not as aware of the dynamic as you would be if you didn't have ears in.
Right, with you.
You know, but it's great because you know it's tight.
Yes.
Funny for our rope in that sense.
Yeah, no, it's about doing it properly and being a tight band. You can't beat that. You had a number 1, didn't you, Si?
We did, yeah, in the Philippines, of all places. We went out there for 10 days. It was absolutely amazing. You know, it really was it was like a theme holiday. You know, what do you want to do? I want to be a rock star for 2 weeks. Well, I'll go out there, then happy days, here's you. You know, we were sponsored by Pony Sportswear, American company at the time, and we were number 1 as we landed. I didn't know what to expect. I was so naive, you know. I thought I didn't know anything about the Philippines, and I got it completely wrong. It was just one of the biggest conurbated cityscapes I'd ever seen, and everything that was there that you'd see in any other major city in the world, you know. But what I wasn't prepared for was the poverty. It was a stark contrast, you know. So whilst it was really exciting when we landed, and we landed at the airport, and we had a room much like this with a buffet, and they came out with flower necklaces. It was really like, what's going on? You know, then they said the police had come in, and I thought we were going to get arrested. And it was a police escort to take us to our hotel on these great big Honda Goldwing bikes. And I thought, this is like, what's going on?
The Stones.
And we were doing TV adverts, children's TV shows. I found the itinerary the other day, strangely enough, you know, where we had some flooring done, so we emptied loads of stuff away, and I found this list, and you know, we were up at 7 every morning. The whole time we were there till 7 at night, just packed full of doing promo, you know, for the band. And we'd get up in the hotel, put the telly on, and we'd be on there advertising, like a karaoke bar.
How did the single get so much exposure in the Philippines?
I honestly don't know. We had some good pluggers at the time and a good team behind us. But I think at that time, or probably still is, the country was very eager for Western music.
Right.
And bands like Oasis and U2 were pulling out of tours there because they were concerned over the safety issues. But for us, we were like, yeah, we'll go, because we would just want to do everything we could. So I think they liked that. They liked the fact that we weren't sort of frightened about going there and seeing. I mean, like I say, I think our naivety helped with that. We stayed in a Manila hotel, which was beautiful, like Rennie McIntosh designed, it hadn't been touched for sort of 60, 70 years or more. It was beautiful. But every single gateway was armed with armed guards, big shotguns. And after a while, I was like, this isn't sitting right with me, So we went out and said, can we go out I want to see the South China Sea and the beach. And he said, oh, don't recommend it. We were like, we got a bit sort of, well, come on, we want to go and see. And we got out there, and that's when the difference started to show itself. There was hundreds of homeless families living in the rocks. They didn't want us to see it. And every day we were getting given food and drinks and stuff, So we went back straight into the hotel. We got as much food as we could, and we went back out there, and we just found the most desperate person we could see and just gave it to him. And they were really sort of, they didn't know what was going on. They thought it was some sort of a joke, So we just walked away and left it there and carried on walking. And when we came back, they realised we were just doing it out of kindness, and we did it as much as we could from there on in. It was a tiny gesture, really, but it started to kind of become a bit weird. We did a shoot for Face magazine. Was it Face? Yeah, Face magazine. Sorry, no, FHM, in the middle of a government compound full of bulletproof Hummers and Porsches and a huge array of super expensive cars. Again, under armed guard, and it was right in the middle of the biggest shanty town that we ever saw the whole time we were there. Literally just levels and levels and levels of people with nothing at all, and they were hanging on the chain link fence trying to get a look at us, and it just didn't feel right. So we spent the whole day again, Jim and I, going out giving them anything we were given. We give them bottles of water, and after about 8 days, I was like, I want to go home. It's been amazing, and it was amazing, but there was a side to that culture there that wasn't right.
So
for me.
Did anyone related to did anyone make a conscious decision that we don't want to focus too much on this market, or was it just you had one single that seemed to appeal to Filipinos?
Like I say, I think they were just very hungry for Western bands because a lot of
so seeing you guys was a real novelty, but
yeah,
there were hardly any Westerners going there at all at that time.
Funnily enough, we did a thing called World AIDS Day for MTV, and it was a massive event, like 45,000 people over a couple of days. I think it was called MTV Summit, and we got to do 3 tracks on this stage. There was 3 drum kits. I mean, it was as big as it could get. But the band on before us were from Hounslow. It was really weird. But they were a hip-hop band. They were really good, and they were much the same. They'd been flown out there by their promo company. And I think they were only there literally for a couple of days. We were only meant to be there for 5 days, and a massive typhoon hit the country, closed all the airports. And so we were given more things. So we ended up doing a Rock Awards ceremony and, a 17,000 people street festival. So it was great from a band point of view. We had a fantastic time.
How bizarre, though. The whole thing sounds so strange.
It was really strange, but it was amazing. It was a great experience. Then we came back and did Glastonbury, and then that was us. It was right towards the end of our career in that particular band. But doing Glastonbury was a good way to end it. I think actually we came back and did The Darkness in Amsterdam, and then we went and did Glastonbury, and that was time to...
That was the end of the Barbs.
Call it quits, yeah.
You're in a band now called Survival. I know this isn't a music podcast, but hopefully our listeners will they'll appreciate listening to something not just about carp. We will get back to carp fishing. So you're in a band now called Survival Code.
Yeah.
A 2-piece band.
Yeah.
Your influences?
Many and varied.
Yeah.
blimey. Well, there's shades of Biffy Clyro in there, and
Yeah, I can hear that.
yeah, it's the nature of the sound that we've got. Alt rock kind of, not particularly challenging songs, but nice melodies, nice harmonies, good sort of arrangements and whatnot, but heavy enough to be
You got some music on there, Tobe?
Yeah,
quite
give me
rocky.
2 secs.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we love stuff like System of a Down and Sepultura and Slipknot, the heavier side of things. But we also love, new English band called Prestamico. If you've heard of them, they're absolutely incredible. So we do like a good song, and we like to rock out as well. My tastes are incredibly broad,
But you're a two-piece as well, so there's a lot of work for you guys there, isn't there?
There is a lot of work, and it wasn't until Gary wanted me to do the backing vocals that I realised how much singing there was. He the style of what he writes, it's sung. There's hardly any middle eights or solos. It's just vocally led, pretty much.
Right.
And so to do that and drum is it's exhausting.
And so when you're playing live, what do you do with the missing instruments? Are you just playing to tracks or?
So on the backing track, there's bass.
Right.
There is extra guitar tracks for thickness, vocal harmonies, which I replicate live, and obviously the vocals are sort of double tracked as well, or triple tracked in certain areas, just to give it the warmth. And it's you've got to come across as an exciting band on record. And that's very hard to do if you don't put the bells and whistles in.
It really is. Do you know, I was watching Toto. There's some good musicians in that band. I know they're a bit of an old school band, but
Phenomenal.
Bloody hell, they got some good musicians. I love their music. And I think Hold the Line was on YouTube, and people were criticising their live performance because they were playing to a backing track, and it's like, but it sounds fucking amazing.
It sounds good. Who cares?
Yeah, who gives a shit? It sounds good, and that audience loved it. It's just.
I was Precious once.
Yeah,
before I knew
Precious.
what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about before, the only reason Nevermind sounded like it did was because Butch Vig tricked Kurt Cobain and
tricked him
because he wouldn't double track his vocals because he had the punk ethic, which we all did, and that's fine, But you can't replicate how you sound live on record if you don't do those things. And that album sounds incredible. He just kept saying,
sold a few copies, didn't it?
"A good take, Kurt. But can you just do another take?"
Yeah.
And he kept them all so he could show him. And that's how he did it. And he came in and went, "That sounds incredible." He was like, "Well, this is what I've done." And that's when he said, "Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
But that's hard to break, that punk attitude. Nothing wrong with that, But I think sometimes you just have
You've got to be a little bit sneaky.
Yeah, you do have to be a bit sneaky in order to kind of get, what works in the end.
Yeah.
But I'm totally, I'm complete. I never used to play to clicks years ago, but I love it now. I just know that it's bang on time.
You're on
and
time.
It just becomes part of what I'm doing. I don't treat it like something separate in my ear, and I'm going like, oh, what, I just gotta, it's just part of my instrument when I'm playing, and I know that it's absolutely on point.
Yeah, there's a few notable musicians that are carp anglers, aren't there? Or general specimen anglers as well.
Well, funny enough, yeah, I've done the BCSG magazine, which was it was his 50th anniversary of the group this year, so. Becoming editor for that, I knew Adrian Smith from Iron Maiden was a member, and I knew he fished Korda, although I'd never met him. But I love that band, so I phoned him up because we got each other's details on the site, and it's a bit weird. All right, mate, and he did a piece on the Colne for me, and I remember it. I remember him catching this common, but unfortunately the photos weren't great, so I put one of my own pictures in of the Colne Brook with some fish in there that I'd caught, and it just worked for the story because it was about fishing under a bridge, and I'd taken a picture off the bridge, so that was okay. But I went up to Korda in June, and I got chatting to a mate of mine, I think it was Dave Short, old school angler, great guy, great angler, and he said, "Oh, that chap round there's really happy. He's had a £10 tent." So I wandered round there, and I see the bivvy, and then the guy just come out of the tent. It was Adrian. I was like, it was a moment of like a bit.
I recognise you.
Rabbit in the head, like, and I went, "All right, Adrian, that's Si, how you doing?" And it was just weird. That band, I spent hours learning that material. I really did.
Nico O'Brien, isn't it?
Nico McBrain.
McBrain,
yeah.
McBrain, yeah.
And they just meant the world to me, that band. So it was had to separate that from. But we had a chat about the band, obviously, because how can you not? You know, you sort of say, all right, yeah, you know, and you're thinking, I love your band, you know, but you have to kind of, because they get it all the time.
I know. I bumped into him last year, and
right.
Same sort of thing, you know, and you've got, but he's caught some big fish.
Yeah, he's had some
hasn't he?
lovely fish.
Yeah, 50-pound carp and double figure tench. But,
yeah,
you
well,
know.
it was his first 10-pounder. That was why he was over the moon with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so it's a good excuse to get one of your heroes to.
Great excuse.
It's great to meet him. Yeah. Good. So, we need to get him on the podcast, don't we?
I've got a picture. Couldn't resist.
You got a picture? Yeah. Is there a picture somewhere?
I'm sure he'd do
it.
Yeah. I think really that'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? He's on tour in America at the moment, you know.
Yeah, he was such a nice guy. We met him last summer, and we'd taken time out.
There's a picture on there for you.
There we are. Look.
Ah, there he is. That's the one.
Yeah.
It's a good picture, that.
Yeah, good.
2 rock stars.
Well, one.
Yeah. Yeah, he showed a little bit of interest about fishing on our lake, and I know he lives locally, Harefield area. So
right.
Yeah, really down to earth guy, and
lovely guy.
like you say, a passionate angler as well.
Yeah.
So getting on to guiding then. So what made you want to decide to be a river guide? What's the name of the company? Thames
Angling Adventures.
Thames Angling Adventures.
If I'm brutally honest, I was just trying to work out ways of getting by whilst I was, you know, figuring out what I was going to do about buying my dad's house. And once I'd made that decision, you know, I was on supply teaching, which isn't great money, to be fair. You know, you don't get paid for the holidays, so the money was running out, and I thought, what can I do that I enjoy, that I can, you know, hopefully pass on something, you know, enjoyable to someone else, and a few experiences. And it just came out of that, really. And I know a lot of my friends had started doing tutorials. I mean, for me, I have to say, it can be a tutorial, but it's mostly about guiding. It's mostly about taking people to parts of the river to catch the sort of fish they want to catch, like pike or predators, you know, or carp or barbel, etc.
It's not necessarily. I was going to ask you that, actually. So your guiding does differ a lot from you're not telling people. Maybe telling people where to fish, but not necessarily telling them.
Yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
You know, obviously the younger people, I had a 5-year-old. You know, Joe Jagger used to work for Nash.
Right.
Lovely guy. Brought his 5-year-old down for 2 days. It was Busman's holiday.
Yeah.
You know, it was crazy. So he was really keen. You know, we got him set up on a float, caught some nice perch and all that sort of stuff. But you generally find that the people that come out with me are experienced anglers on pits and stuff already. So apart from showing them maybe different types of lines, or, you know, things that are going to not get too destroyed, you know, fishing in the Thames itself, you know, I'll tell them about what's on the bottom or the kind of features that they're looking for if they haven't fished rivers at all. But in terms of actually fishing itself, they're all pretty capable, you know, so it's more about taking them to places where they've got a good chance of catching something.
But the river, especially where you are, so you're on the Thames, and it's a big stretch of river, isn't it?
It is.
It's tidal.
Yeah.
So I mean, where do you start? I guess that's why people are coming to you. It's knowing where to start, and where are you finding fish in small pockets all along the river, or? I've
always found that on rivers, there's always spots within spots. So even if you're in the general area, that's not good enough. You know, you need to be in the zone or in the hot spot, unless you're picking up travelling fish. But you know, like for instance with perch fishing or chub fishing, you can be looking to fish an area as big as this table, but if you're not where that glass is, you ain't getting a bite. You know, it can be that sort of precise sometimes, not all the time, but that's what I found a lot of the time. Mostly on the smaller rivers, to be fair, for that kind of scenario. But when I first got there, the picture doesn't really tell you what you're dealing with. So when I looked at the front of the prospectus for the university, it looked like a big river, but it didn't look any different to anything else I'd ever seen. So I did all my signing up and everything, and I looked and I asked them, where is it? Oh, it's down there, mate, you know. And I got down and it was full tide, you know, and it was a big one. So it was over the bank, probably 150 yards wide, if not more. And I just thought, oh, well, that's not going to, you know, I just didn't know what to do with it. I didn't fish it for 5 years.
Right.
I tell a lie, I fished it once in Teddington in the winter, and I only had a 10-foot Hardy Avon rod, and I threw it in and it went round to the spigot, and I thought, oh, you know, laughed my head off, reeled in and went home. So I didn't fish it for ages.
You need to spend, you either need to spend a lot of time walking along the river, or you need to be able to mix with other anglers that are fishing the river? I mean, are the locals on the river, especially the ones maybe that are fishing for carp more, are they particularly secretive, or are they quite open with information?
You often find if you've got something like that is it's not infinite, but it is compared to a lake where you can walk around and see who's fishing it. So you tend to stick to your bits, and because I was at uni there and I had a friend who lived on the boatyard where I started fishing for him, I tended just to stick to that, because I thought, well, I found some fish now, and you're looking sort of towards London, or you're looking towards Hampton Court and beyond, when the tidal gates are up especially. So you think, well, what's the point of moving? I've got some fish here, so I'll kind of make the most of that, and that's what I did for the first maybe the first year. And but towards the autumn I had a 31-pound common, and then the next couple of days I just saw a landing net waving around on the bank, and thought, what was going on here? And I've never seen a carp angle on the river, and I'd only been in that area for 4 years, I think, or so. And I waded out of the river, and there's a guy carp fishing. I couldn't believe it, but I wasn't bank fishing then, I was on the boat, so I didn't care, it was another carp angler, great, and we got chatting. I threw a sickie, because it was obviously we got on, and it was John Gard, and I've learnt more off that guy in terms of the river, certainly over the first 10 years that I've fished it, than anybody, and then it gets smaller then, because he knows half a dozen more guys, because he lived there all his life at Ham. Everybody knew John. He was the person to meet on the river at that time. No one knew it like he did. No one caught as many fish out of there as he had, carp fishing wise. He pioneered that stretch. There's Keith the Tooth, Keith Connor, and some fantastic match anglers as well. But John was the guy to meet, really, so it was quite fortuitous. So we've been the best of mates for over 20 years.
You're talking about your stretch of river. I mean, what kind of how long is the length or stretch of river that you tend to specialise in more?
I'd say I don't really fish the fully tidal anymore. It was never the same. There is some big fish there now, to be fair, but it went downhill. There was a massive pollution in 2005 and 2004 in mid-July, I'm going to say. Millions of tons of sewage, and it dispersed everything. It just didn't fish for a long time after that. But once I realised I could catch them on the semi-tidal, it just gave me more options, because when they dropped the half-lot gates at Richmond Footbridge, you get 8 hours straight fishing where you don't have to worry about the rise or the drop. So that just became, as a local, again, wasn't driving. I'd have a little bucket, a little river, like a chub fishing chair, a little hold or a little backpack, and I'd just walk up the river, and I'd be fishing, like 8 hours before I had to go back home. But I always found in the river it kept you fishing quite real, because you couldn't. So I might just do another night. It was you had your 3 hours on the fully tidal because of the drag when it started to come back in again. You had to go home, or it would run out of water, and you couldn't fish anymore anyway. And then the bit above the half lot would be 8 hours, so it's it's set amounts of time to catch.
How are the fish reacting to the tides, do you think?
They definitely move around with it, no doubt about that. But they
a long way, or
they can do. I mean,
they're going backwards and forth, or
they're nosy creatures.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
they're really nosy things, aren't they?
I mean, I've heard of fish getting caught up at. I had a linear at Kingston on a float, actually. Blimey, when was that now? 2004. And it got caught a couple of years ago. I think it was, where would it have been now? Not terrible distance away, but sort of Shepherd and Staines, or up somewhere near there. So it's gone a good way, through a good few locks as well. But I've heard of fish also that have been caught at Richmond getting caught at Chelsea and things like that. So they do explore. They're nosy devils, aren't they?
They are. Do you think most of these fish are they've come from lakes?
A lot did come from lakes in the big flood in 2007.
You're talking about the linear fisheries, the fish coming.
All of those waters around there. Yeah. It's a bit like the Thames Valley in Staffordshire. The British Carp Study Group have got a lake there now, and it floods every year with the river, unfortunately. We've had it fenced now. In fact, Embryo really, really helped us with that and did a great job. So our fish are hopefully staying where they are meant to be. But that entire lake system in the Thames Valley was populated, we think, by Kingsbury Water Park, which was one of the kind of best carp fisheries in the 90s in that area. Really lovely scaly fish, but all of those lakes have got big scaly fish in now.
Yeah.
And that's because they got out of
We've got
there.
any examples, Tobe, of some fish out the river?
Yeah, no, they could
Be,
be.
I don't know if we've got any scaly ones, Si, on here,
Some
actually.
water.
Yeah. I said to you, it's like being in a sauna here, Si.
It's thirsty work.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope I'm not boring
No, of course
everybody.
not. No, absolutely not.
Myself.
Yeah.
Oh,
Actually, while he's waiting for that, I mean, so the Thames in the last probably year or so, it's gained a little bit more publicity. Maybe surprised a few people with the size of carp
How's
that have
that
been
one for
caught
you?
out of there.
Oh,
Look at
right.
that.
So that's the 31 that I had off the back of my friend's boat, and that was the week before I met John Gard. £31 on the nose it was.
That's a cracking picture, Si.
It was what a day that was. I mean,
Wow.
it was brilliant. You know, I was on cloud nine for ages. I mean, the 30's still a big fish out of the river, but a lot of people think
It's
there's
a big
loads.
fish
There isn't,
anywhere, isn't it? Yeah.
particularly in that stretch.
Were you surprised at that?
I hadn't seen anything that big. You
No.
know, most of the fish we were catching were between about sort of 8 and 16 pounds. You
Yeah.
know, and you might get a 21 or a 22.
Yeah.
But I hooked that one, and I'd figured out then that I was fishing it chub style. I mean, I've talked about this before and other things, but I was on the back of my mate's boat. It had quite a high bow on it, and it was one 11-foot Sportex 2 test rod, Cardinal 55, tutti frutti boilies, a tin of chickpeas. Couldn't have been more simple. I didn't have a lot of gear then in those days. I'd sold it all actually when I'd gone to college in order to buy a drum kit, and then I started sort of accruing it back since then. So I had enough to go, enough to do some stalking, and you know, that was fine. So I'd hook this fish anyway. He'd start getting little taps like this, and then it just hoop over. And I knew that if I hit them hard and went up the side of the boat, because it was the outermost boat, I could turn them, and then they'd go into the middle of the Thames, and I'd have time to play them out without worrying about them getting around the piles and things. And it was no different with that one. I hit into it, ran round the side of the boat, kind of unceremoniously guided it into the middle of the river, and then it just broad-shouldered out in the middle, and I thought, crikey, that's quite a good one.
Yeah.
And then I just really, really gently, like you do when you know you've got a big fish on, you tend to be a little bit more careful.
Yeah.
And it come right close, but because it was a low tide actually, and that's what was good about fishing on the boat, because I had water to fish in the whole time. I wasn't relying on, you know, kind of waiting for the water to come up to get into the spots. You know, I was on it, and I got it beat, and it was, but the flow was kind of, it compressed my rod right over, and the weight of the fish on the surface, it was just stuck there like this, and I was just inching it, and the guy from the barge next door, he got one, mate, and he had done a bit of fishing actually. I said, I've got a real good one, and I said, have you ever landed a fish before, mate? And he said, I haven't really caught anything like that. So he's got the net down, and the net cord was about a foot off the surface, you know, and you're kind of panicking, going, hook's going to come out, and you know. And I said, just drop the net down as deep as you can get it. And we just kind of, it's a bit of a panic, but we got it in and hauled it up, and that was the one that I had. And strangely enough, 6 years later, I had it again at 38 pounds and 2 ounces. Then after the flood and the sewage influx, it moved, and it went and started to live in the Twickenham stretch, and Terry caught it there, Dave Swinchak caught it there, and Nick Hellier caught it there, and unfortunately the last known capture I think was with Nick. Some of its tail was missing, and it was down to 32 pounds.
Oh, that was on the film.
Oh, okay. So
I think that was on the sticky bait. Was it on the sticky bait film?
Possibly, I'm not quite sure, but it had
Cool
gone down
comment on
to, you know, it was an old fish by then, so
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still there, but it certainly gave me a lot of joy. when
Yeah,
it
I
was.
bet. You got the picture to go with it as well there, didn't you? It was
Yeah.
so your first 30 out the river.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
And my second, weirdly enough. And then
Was
I had
it?
a 31 mirror as well after that, which was a character. Everyone knew that fish too. It lives in various parts of the Thames depending on any given day. But when I had the common at 38, I just landed. I was edging my bets with the tide. It was virtually out. I mean, it was feet deep, you know, 2 feet max.
Amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
And I got it. It's a long story. I got it in the net, and the phone went, and John goes, "All right, mate, fishing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've got a massive common," you know, and that was that story. But
So yeah, I was just getting back to what I said a moment ago, Si, about these I mean, Nick Hellier caught a really
phenomenal fish.
Beautiful fish, wasn't it?
Mm.
Obviously, you guys around the Thames, you knew all about that fish?
I knew all about that one. Yeah, several years. Nick did too. I think all of us knew it was getting caught. I think the last photograph I have of it, it was 47, I'm going to say. Something like that. And oddly enough, I'd been up there the day before it was found dead, because a friend of mine, Navy John's got a boat on that stretch as well. He'd been having a great time up there. Beautiful area. I mean, it's a different ball game, that part of Berkshire. It's so different to what I'm used to. It's completely rural on the whole, and just gorgeous. Like big steep sided banks.
Oh, look, yeah.
Lilies, gin clear. It's different world altogether.
Is there an influx of carp anglers still on there at the moment then? I mean, obviously, were there a lot of people chasing that fish at that time?
I believe so. I mean, I didn't fish. I just went down for a look, and we only saw one other guy fishing in a weir off a boat, which wasn't on the stretch it lived on. And then once we got onto that stretch, Old Tell was there on the left because he'd recently moved his boat. But yeah, I really liked it. I can see the attraction. I mean, there's all sorts of big fish there. There's 8-pound chub and big pike, massive barbel. So it's got an appeal for general anglers. Like all of us fish for everything. No, none of us that fish the river are just carp anglers. Yeah,
like I say, anyone that just enjoys being out on the river or out in the country, I mean, that is just about as idyllic a spot you could possibly wish to fish.
Oh, it's
down
gorgeous.
There.
You pay for the privilege. I mean, the mooring's a lot more expensive than it is where we are. But I think it'd definitely be a consideration just for the tranquility.
Absolutely. That one came from Oxford, possibly, didn't it?
I think that is more likely to be a Dinton type fish. I mean, there's a concentration of fish like that in that area, which rings true with where Dinton is. Right. But it's hard. Who knows? I mean, I only watched a video of that quite recently, and I messaged Nick and said, that is incredible. I just wanted to let the dust settle down a little bit before I watched it, because I know it was a big deal. And but to see it on the bank like it was as a headshot, where its mouth comes into view and you can see the curtain and the cavernous black behind it. It's just what a creature.
So it's one of the best looking carp.
What a fish. And the story's ace. I love the way he told the story about it.
Yeah.
And how he thought it was a small one, because that's what the Thames is like that. And I suppose a lot of carp too, where they're, you get the rocket 20s, don't you? And
I like the bit what he said about the bream coming in there. Where the bream were feeding and he was getting liners or something, and then all of a sudden it all went quiet. Yeah. And then it all went quiet, and he thought that's what was going on all the time with that fish.
I've definitely had that with chub fishing.
Have you?
When you've got a lot of minnows and things like that and small silvers, and you're getting like all this, then it'll and you think, it's
like a great white shark coming into the swimming, isn't it? Yeah. No, it's awesome. But yeah, I guess now, we probably wouldn't have, out of respect for people that you wanted to catch that fish, I suppose we wouldn't be. We can talk about it now. It was a shame.
Yeah, well, there's loads of other beauties there.
There are, that's and everywhere else as well.
I mean, it's such a shame, but they don't last forever. Everybody knows that. There's rumours that it was ottered. I'm not 100% sure, because it was so decomposed when I saw the pictures of it. It looked like it had been sort of attacked and fed on a bit whilst it was in that state. It had been dead along a good while, I think. Who knows? Who knows? They are an issue. Everybody knows that. But like I say, river anglers, you're happy to catch a carp out of the river no matter how big it is. They're Thames carp at the end of the day. So whilst that be a devastating issue for a syndicate perhaps on a lake, it's a shame for the river, but it's certainly not the end of the
It's not
story.
the end of it. No, absolutely not. Another thing you must notice with fishing on the rivers is obviously moon phases play a part there a little bit, don't they?
Well, to be honest, Matt, I mean, you've talked a bit about how busy I am. If I started thinking about, not going and going because the moon was in a certain, I just, I don't pay any attention to it. I don't dismiss it. I know that there's science in it. Makes sense, with the gravitational pull. I know that because the tide's on the river, but I cannot get involved in that because I just don't have the time to pick and choose.
I'm similar as well, actually. If I went fishing whenever the weather was right, it would be. But it's interesting, nevertheless. Someone at work was saying that we were talking about. One of the guys in the office the other day said, "I couldn't sleep last Sunday. He said I was waking up in a cold sweat." And he said, I don't. And I said, "What were you ill?" And he said, "No, I don't know what was wrong." And he said, oh, it was a full moon that night. And I went, oh, right, okay. And then another guy came into the office and said, I couldn't sleep Sunday night either. And I was in Barcelona last weekend, but it was a full moon, and I don't know. I mean, it obviously does play its part, doesn't it? It has.
I think it's got. I've only ever really put it down to light levels. I've always struggled on little rivers on bright moons because the light goes up, and the fish definitely respond to that. It's no secret that you can have a better day in the winter if it's overcast and it's 8 to 9 degrees or more. It's for me, it's about light levels. River fishing, and it could be if you haven't got decent curtains at home.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything more to it than that. If I get home from a day at work teaching, there could be full moons in the sky. I'm going to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I've noticed it with fog actually as well on lakes, where as soon as the fog's lifted, it's quite
I've
well
never done
known.
any good in the
Never do well. But
Alec Welland, do you remember Alec Welland? I remember him writing a chapter.
He used to fish Ashley Pool, was it?
I think so. I think he was East Anglia based, but I remember him doing an article on fishing in the fog or in the mist, and I think the common consensus was it just wasn't very good.
Well, I've seen it a few years ago actually. The guys were on the canal bank on the other side, and it was like a really, really foggy morning, and they were kind of expecting to get bites. I mean, you don't always expect to get bites, but they were expecting to get bites. And one of the guys, Stu, was really on the fish as well. And it was really, really foggy. And as soon as the fog lifted, they all got bites. There were 3 along there, and they all got bites.
See, for that, I mean, temperature maybe. I've always thought maybe it's just that extra bit of cold layer that just kind of puts them on a little bit of a, I'm not sure. And then as soon as it pings up a tiny bit, like the Colne responds so quickly to temperature. All those little rivers do. 2 or 3 degrees, you're having a great day or a result compared to nothing at all. Literally in the space of a few hours can be. It's switch.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It is. I mean, the only experience I've ever had of the moon thing, and it wasn't me, it was my good mate Stuart Linton, had a Wazing ticket. And I remember I was traipsing around B&Q trying to find something for the house, and he phoned me up and, all right, mate. He says, yeah, I'm going to go down for that parrot tomorrow. He goes, it's got a history of a full moon. I was like, oh, yeah, go on, like crystal ball. And he booked me like 5 o'clock the next morning. I've had it, £60 for. I was just, that's the only definite sort of, personally, I know you read about stuff, but for someone I knew to purposefully go out and with a view to getting a chance for that fish, and he caught it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Like I say, I can't get into that.
No. No. You kind of specialise a little bit in fishing for kind of try and fish for uncaught carp, generally around the Colne Valley.
Has been. Plus, I did do that to a certain extent in the Midlands before I came to London as well. They were slightly easier to find in those days. Not so easy to find now, although there's still a few out there.
I was going to say, there's some real desirable ones still out there.
There is. Yeah.
Are there?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So just because there's a lot of carp anglers around nowadays, and you've still got to know where to look.
It's very hard to keep things quiet these days.
Yeah.
The old days when you didn't have mobiles and no internet, it's kind of easy, really.
Yeah. Well, at least do you think there are certain parts of the country where you're more likely to find these? When you're talking about, so what is the criteria for you, Si? What are you looking for? Nice, shape, size of fish?
I have to say, it's lack of anglers.
You were just, right.
Yeah,
right.
And there's obviously it's better if there's something, I'm not going to find a hole, in the middle of a wooded area that's hard to get to if it's only full of £8 commons. You've got to have something that lights your fire, so to speak. But yeah, I'm happy to fish for, fish that, I don't have to be 50s and 40 pounders to be special to me. It's just about not being busy. I have to have that solitude. I love it. I love my own company. And not all the time, but I have to have that. I have to be on my own at least once a week, I think, just to give me time to just reflect and sort of put my brain back together. Fishing for me is as much about that as it is about trying to catch something these days.
Right.
You know, I can get into you know, a campaign, for want of a better word. You know, I think we've all got that in us still. You know, once you sort of think, I might have a look at that, and you start that, then you can get as immersed in it as you ever were. But I like I said earlier, for me, it's just got to be outside.
How are you finding these new venues potentially? Then is it word of mouth, or are you? A
lot of the time it's word of mouth. Like I say, I don't really get time to explore as much as I used to. A lot of the places that I fish now are places that I've known about for at least 5 years. You know, and in some cases getting on for 10 years. Some of those places are a little bit more out there now, but again, it requires a certain approach to even to be able to do it effectively. It's not for everybody. You know, some of them still involve you know, fences, and it's just not for everyone. You know, but the one lake that I spent most of my time on doesn't involve any of that. You know, it's one of our group waters. It had the biggest fish I've ever seen ever in it, you know, when we first got the lake. So I pulled off a lot of those waters that were physically challenging, because I could do exactly the same thing for a fish that I know had never been caught, and I could do what I wanted, you know. And I had that to myself for 3 years. It didn't happen. I did catch a beautiful linear in that time, and lots of other fish that had been put in there by the group, you know.
So what happened to that other fish then? Do you know what?
It's really hard to say. I mean, I haven't seen it for 4 years. It's enormous. I mean, I just couldn't get over it when I saw it. You know, I mean, it really was that incredible. So it worries me that it hasn't been seen like it would any other angler who fishes for those type of things. You've got to go on what you see. You can't just fish for maybes, you know. But the fact that I'd seen it, the first time I saw it was in 2013. Then I saw it again. I think it was 3 years later. Is that right? And you know, but I'd been in the most ideal conditions, thinking, where the hell is this fish? And red hot all, you know, it's last time I saw it, red hot all summer, you know, perfect float weather, nobody there. So this is the key as well. So it's still wild. And all the marauders like around, like, you know, we used to call them, that had been put in. And I'm thinking, where is it? You know, I just couldn't figure it out. And then one day it just popped up on a day where it was really overcast, thick cloud, but quite tropical, towards the end of the summer. And it was a day where you could almost reach up and you felt like you grabbed the cloud out of the sky like candy floss. It was really close. And it just turned up, you know, there it is, you know, and it ate a willow leaf off the surface. And it was just so ridiculous after 3 years of all this bait, and it ate a leaf.
So it's not been caught?
No. There was rumours like you get, and people coming back to me saying, oh, your mate's caught that one, we found out. And turned out it was James, who works, you know, Jamie Turner, and he'd never even been to the lake. So that's the rumour mill, you know. Yeah. Anyways, it was last seen definitely. Well, that's the last time I definitely saw it. There's been a few other possibles. But the interesting thing about the lake is that the deepest I found 62 feet. So there's a lot of water out there. You're averagely fishing in between, say, 16 to 25. And my friend's he's currently on a 2-week session there. You know, he's got a holiday. He's a great angler, really good guy, and he's doing great. You know, he's had some real nice fish in the last few days. But one of the interesting things is he caught a 21 the other day that hadn't been seen since it was stocked 6 years ago. So it's had some great anglers through there. You know, Curly Atchman, Roland Wood, you know, you name it, Craig Banks. There's been some good anglers on there. And we've all tried, you know, to catch this big fish, and hardly anyone's seen it. And if I look back, if I hadn't been there on those 2 days where I saw it, I never would have seen it, and I probably wouldn't have believed it. So you just never know. And Curly was there the other day, and there's a snag tree, and he saw the linear I had, which we call Buzz, which is mid 30, and there was a big pale fish next to it that was much bigger, and that, I think, is a fish that I call the yellowfish. There's 3 big ones that I've seen, and so you just think, well, it's possible, isn't it? You know, and that's enough, isn't it? It's just that shred of possibility that keeps you going. But of course, the marauders, they're all upper 20s, and some of them are 30s now, so it's a much more level playing field.
Sounds like an exciting venue.
It's lovely.
Yeah. How do you do people? I mean, How do you keep things to yourself? I mean, I've always fished lakes where they're generally well known, and I've never had to do that. I mean, how do you play that game?
I'm
or
a
do you have to
terrible
play?
liar.
Really?
Yeah. You know, and I don't like lying.
Yeah.
You know, so the easiest thing is not to say anything at all, because then you don't have to lie about anything. Do you know what I mean?
Just don't talk too much.
But you know, when I had that big one 10 years ago now it is, from the Colne Valley, I would tell my friends in the Midlands, because they're 100 miles away, and you know, and you can share the adventure then without, you know, it kind of it doesn't make you feel like you're so alone.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
which sounds a bit weird, but it can get quite lonely. You know, especially if you're tucked in a reed bed or behind a wall of bushes, or you know, you're not really looking at the lake. You've done your homework, you know what you're doing, but you haven't got eyes on. You're just hoping you've got it right, and sometimes that's what makes these missions last a really long time, because you're hiding better than you're fishing sometimes.
Exactly.
Did that at the Mere, you know, and then I
Yeah.
gave up with that, and you know, I said before, I caught one quite quickly once I'd thought, sod it, you know, it's if I get caught, I get caught. But a lot of these places you can't get caught. You know, I didn't want to be seen by dog walkers, let alone anglers, because I already feel like it's a bit like hide and seek when you're a kid. You know, we used to pride ourselves on, you know, when we get sort of 5 against 5 when we were in a, you know, like 13 or whatever, and in the fields, and you just do everything not to get caught, you know, and it's never left me, you know, and I just don't like getting seen. Like, you know, I like to be like, it's just really hard to explain. I feel like I've been caught out if someone sees me.
Right.
I remember, you know, one of the lakes, and I got a bit cocky, you know, and I hadn't seen anyone for a couple of days, and I just went out there to check my spot, you know, and then I looked up and there's 2 wardens there. I was like, you know, so I just delved in and pulled a load of weed out, and I just pretended to be going through all this weed and pretending I was looking for invertebrates, and because I just thought I didn't know what else to do, you know.
What do you think they thought you were when they saw that?
And I just thought, oh, you idiot, you know, it's ridiculous. But I felt like the game was up, even though it wasn't, you know. But I'd much prefer it if no one knows what I'm doing.
Right.
I'd much prefer it until I've, you know.
You're pretty well. I mean, that's when you kind of. I remember seeing that picture of. It was a reserve, wasn't it? Was it 46 pound?
Yeah.
That was a lovely fish. Toby has definitely got a picture of that one.
I have, yeah.
So there was a similar scenario going on with that lake, wasn't there? Where wasn't there like 5 fish in the lake or something?
3. When I fished
3
it.
fish in the lake.
Yeah, carp wise.
Yeah.
A lot of jacks. Only 2 tench, as far as I could tell.
There
Right.
it is.
And yeah, that's the one. Like a life changing event for me. It really
They don't
was.
come a lot nicer than that, do they?
No.
Bloody hell! I mean, that was fitting for the book as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That sort of fitted very well with the fitted in well with the carpy. But yeah, it was that's a beautiful fish sight.
There's not many
What a surprise!
opportunities you get to do that kind of thing completely on your own terms. And you know, it got to, I think it was the 3rd year or 3rd spring. You know, I didn't keep going and going and going. You know, I'd get there April when I thought I had a better chance of catching it, you know, when they're a bit off guard and all the rest of it.
You knew exactly what the stock was by
I
this.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I started off, there's another lake nearby, and I started off on there because there was more fish in there. You know, I hadn't seen anything jaw dropping, but I had it to myself. And that was the point, you know. And then it's you know, like all things in carp fishing, you know, kids get older and they start exploring, and then other faces started to appear, and there was a lot of irresponsible people buying throwaway tents, and it got all a bit sort of.
And the locals, there were houses on the lake, or there were.
The residents backed on 2 sides of it, if I remember rightly, and there was just complaints going in every day about the people who weren't taking so much care, and. There was a gravel company that owned the water, not CMEX, and so the council immediately got hold of the landowners to organise it to be netted, because why should they care? You know, they just wanted the complaints to stop. So the writing was on the wall for me. It was now or never, and plus I'd told a good.
Sorry,
mate
you
of mine-
heard from CMEX, did you? How did you know the lake was going to be netted?
It wasn't CMEX, it's actually Brett's. And that was the tie to Kent at the time.
Yeah,
you
mid
know,
Kent.
And that's why Mid Kent Fisheries came up to net it, because Brett's rented a lot of their water to Mid Kent. So that was how that came about, because Staines Council phoned Brett's, who then phoned Mid Kent, who then came to try and put an end to it, you know. So it was all a bit, well, it was horrible, you know. My paradise was getting ruined. So it was when I caught it, I was like, whew, you know, finally sort of drew a line under it, if you like, you know.
Did that surprise? I mean, the size, is that fish being out regularly at that kind of size?
No. Well, yeah, it was last out 43, I think it was. Terry caught it, and he's done slideshows on it subsequently. Ironically, in the very same week in May that I caught it, I think it was 7 years previous. So it just goes to show that sometimes there is a time frame for fish like that to get caught, but it's not an easy one.
Sorry, so did the lake ever actually get netted?
It did. I believe they took out everything that was in there apart from that one. As far as I understand it, it just didn't get netted. It evaded capture, so to speak.
Did it really?
You know, so yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? Still in there now?
I don't know.
Right.
I have to say.
So I there was a period where you decided to try something a little bit different with your fishing, Simon. You had to go on Yateley Car Park Lake.
I did. I went there in 2010 just because it came through the door. I'd forgotten I'd even sort of.
Was that like a gold card or?
Pardon?
Was that a gold card or
no,
you just waited
just,
for the syndicate?
It was just for the Car Park Lake, nothing else. I'd always harboured a romanticism that I wanted to catch one of those big fish.
Yeah, we all did a little bit, didn't we?
Yeah. You know, before the end type of thing. And
what year was this?
2009. Was it? 2010. Yeah.
Did you still have the 2010? So what was still in there? So you had most of the stock still in there then?
Yeah, Arthur was in there, both oranges, heather, dustbin, I think, was still there. It was all kind of like one a year were turning over at that time, it seemed. But bittersweet, really, that was, you know. I put as much into it as I could. But I was teaching, so I was I didn't have the sort of 72 hours a go. I had like overnights and the odd weekend.
Were you surprised? I mean, because we do romanticise about fishing there a little bit, and you know, so it's kind of like what's the first session like on there? What was your expectation with the other anglers and the way everybody else was fishing the Car Park Lake? I mean, were they all fishing differently or doing the same thing?
Some were doing my kind of thing, you know, close in, sort of trying to find little close in spots and stuff like that. But the game had massively changed compared to the days where my mate Guy was fishing the cops and my mate Plug was on the match and all that sort of stuff. In as much as it was all bait boats. You know, I've never had a bait boat. I don't dislike bait boats. It just wasn't part of my psyche to have one. And that was a big hindrance, I think, in hindsight, you know, the way that it was being fished. But it was quite interesting to see the innovations that the younger anglers were having with those, because they would take out bat leads kind of 30 yards out that way and then drop a bat lead and then come back and drop the bait. So the angle line was different. So it was quite interesting to see how they were making that more effective, if you like, you know, and putting different layers of heavier baits to burst the bait out more rather than having tightly baited spots. And so that was quite interesting. But did
you know, were those guys were they any more successful for these slightly off the wall kind of approaches?
Yeah, some were. I think some, like Gareth Hayes, a good pal of mine, one of the bailiffs there at the time, he was really successful at the end. He just he'd been there long enough to know what was working, and you know, he caught quite a few fish. But as I say, I would always turn up a bit late after work and only really had the choice of what was left a lot of the time in terms of spots. But it's no excuse. It was rock hard, there's no doubt about that. But I definitely didn't have the amount of time that I was probably required to get a take of some sort. I did actually lose two, as it goes, and I had some horrific kind of punishments on there into the bargain. You know, I got after going twice on floaters. One time a lead went into the spot about 5 foot from him and spooked him. Another time a chap walked into the swim and, all right mate, you know, got one going, and it was kind of off again. I just couldn't. It just, whatever I did there, it just didn't work. You know, something went wrong. Yeah. And in the end, I did one night in my last season and never.
How many
back.
seasons did you fish there?
I think it was just 3 summers. The first summer I didn't hardly fish it at all, and then the second summer I'd give it a half a go. But again, I had to be pulling off at sort of 5:30 in the morning and it wasn't enough really for what I was trying to get out of it. But
summer's a bit restricted because it's got some winter form as well, hasn't it, the car park?
Yeah, but again, I just don't carp fish in the winter, but some brilliant things came out of it. I'd already knew James through Angling Intelligence at the time, and then Gaz was obviously putting together Forgotten Chapters, so James introduced me to Gaz and we became friends, and we fished the Mere a bit together, and there was loads of great friendships made there, and arguably that is much more important than catching anything, because they last a lifetime. Your memories of fishing is one thing. I don't really look through my photographs anymore. I tend to look through old ones. I go around plugs and look at a slideshow because it's nostalgia. But I can't remember the last time I printed a photograph. The physical photographs of certainly the last 10 years are either in books or magazines, and my own pictures are all on my phone, unfortunately. But I've just kind of lost the drive for that. I love catching them, but I'm not that I know it sounds a bit I'm not that bothered. I love having a photograph, but on my phone's near enough. It's good enough. Unless of course it's something super special and important, and that's slightly different. But I just like I said, love being out there.
I'm always fascinated by the Mere, actually, because it's so what made you want to go and fish the Mere? I mean, were you obviously, was that part of being in the Yateley clique at the time and hearing a little bit about what was going on there?
I should have got on there a lot sooner than I did. There's no doubt.
That's not too far from you, is it?
10 miles away.
Is it?
Yeah.
And you've been aware of this place for? Well,
since Jay had it, really. Jay Hayward.
Yeah.
John
early
Gard.
90s, well.
Pardon?
So early 90s.
Yeah, John Gard, I told you about the Thames angler. He'd actually found those fish when he was bird watching. You know, so we knew what was in there. Ironically, I had a ticket for that when you could fish it. Amy Roadstone permit, the Poor Man's Yateley or the Poor Man's Leisure Sport book, was full, as it turned out, of incredible carp lakes that were off radar because they weren't leisure sport, and ironically held some of the most incredible carp in the country, but none of us knew that. We only had an Amy book for Orchid or Dorchester. It was 18 quid for a year, and it was for, I'm going to say like 25 lakes, but there could have been more. So you had Colmere, Dorchester, Queenford Lagoon, Fen Drayton. I think a lot of the St Ives complex was on there. I mean, the list is endless.
Yeah.
If we only knew, it's all hindsight again. But yeah. So after the car part, after I caught that one we were just talking about, I thought, right, what next? I wasn't that bothered, to be fair. But Gaz said he was going to go and have a look. So I went and met Gaz the one day, and I think Rob Gillespie was there, little Rob.
Were you really familiar with the lake before that, or was that your first visit?
I'd been up there.
Right.
Yeah, I'd been up and
just
had a look
describe
at it
what the lake is like when it sounds like a fairly wild place.
Super overgrown the first time I looked at it, which would have been about 96, 95, 96. And then early 2000s, the same. But the rumour mill was like, if you get caught, you get an £800 upwards fine. So it just kind of thought, I don't know, I don't want to be that kind of, claustrophobic fishing and not really enjoying it. But it was only that day when I went up to meet Gaz and Rob that I knew I had to fish there, and I didn't want to miss out.
What was it?
It was partly because they were there.
Right.
And I just wanted to be part of that adventure, like we all do. You think, I'll have a bit of that. It's like going to the pub, innit? You come in, yeah, definitely. Who's going? It's the same thing. You don't want to miss out. So
it's
thought,
quite
sod it. Why not? It sounds great. And actually, it was a lot easier to fish there than a lot of the waters that I'd fished of that ilk. You could hide quite effectively. Not so effectively if you wanted to be on the fish, as it turned out. Once I'd realised and accepted that, I just got on with it and fished it.
So the same thing with the Mere a little bit, where you were spending more time trying to not be spotted, rather than that was definitely a detriment to the fishing.
Everyone falls into that trap. I know Briggsy said to me, he goes, same as you, mate, fell down the rabbit hole, kind of kept out of the way. I mean, I was fishing hard, but I was fishing. I had to wade to my spot, so that was always a good one, and couldn't be seen from the bank at all.
So there were swims that are being made. How come the rangers, the bailiffs, were not cottoning in onto where anglers were fishing?
There wasn't really any bailiffs as such. There was wildlife rangers.
Yeah.
Well, they do the odd the the odd recce, if you like, or the odd round. But it was only really if the ski club next door kicked up and said there's anglers over there, and then they might come down again to check. A few randoms. I got caught a couple of times, but not by anyone official. You know, I kind of had my little Diamag kit, you know, so it was only this long, and I said, it's a tripod, it's not rods, you know. They didn't believe me in any way, you know. I felt bad. I got clocked, and Steve was there, and he had to hide all this, so we had to keep a low profile, you know. But you didn't sort of advertise it, or, you know, you weren't blatant.
So the anglers that were fishing there done a pretty good job then, really?
Yeah, I think so. It was never any more than sort of 3 or 4 of us.
And did anybody kind of outside of your... Because it sounded like a little bit of a click on there, because if it wasn't, you'd have all Tom, Dick and Harry down there, and they would potentially ruin the cover for everybody else. So how did that happen? How did everybody... I
think you have, with somewhere like that, you always had a little group of like-mindeds on any given year, and sometimes there'd be 6 or 7, and sometimes there'd be just 2, you know. But it was always the same kind of attitude to your fishing, so we always got on. And but you'd always get nights where you'd hear loads of sticks cracking and loads of noise. Think, what the hell's this? And then 2 guys would turn up with 2 barras and just not having done any homework at all, like hands on knees, panting and looking like they're about to have a heart attack. And then they'd do a night and go and never come back, you know. But you'd see that at least 2 or 3 times over a summer, where someone had not just been down and had a look first to see how far the lake actually was from where you could put your car for a start off, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, on the whole, it was just like-minded group of people, you know, sort of.
Because you were there right until the fish kill. So, yeah, I mean, did the lake change in that respect? I mean, because the longer that everybody knew about that fish, I mean, kind of everybody sort of knew about it, even if nobody knew about it, if you see what I mean. Was it attracting more different people, or sorry, I've probably already answered your question there. But did the lake change in, you know, I mean, in Tails' book and everything, he would be talking about having to cut through undergrowth, Dave knows, but did the
if
lake
anything,
change?
It got more dangerous.
Did it?
Certainly on one bank, you know, you'd get at least 2 trees down per season, and then it became more like 4 or 5 if there was a big storm or something. You know, it's a bit decrepit. As far as I understand it, it's been sorted out to a certain extent, you know, which isn't good from a fishing point of view, but certainly I think it's a bit safer than it used to be. But that's mostly from a bird watcher's or a walker's point of view. It had to be done, really. It was, you know, dicey. But in terms of the actual lake itself, it never really changed.
So the fishing stayed the same the whole time?
Yeah, it'd always get an algal bloom on it,
you
know, no matter what. And unfortunately, that year it was really bad.
Yeah,
and that's what was the.
Sorry, do you want to just so what was the stock? What was the stock?
That's a really good question. I'm going to say 20,
right?
Maybe 25 carp. You know,
from what sizes?
Everything from. I didn't see anything. Well, I did see a few sort of double-figure commons, but most of the fish were sort of 20, between sort of 22 to obviously the big one. But not many real big uns, a few 30-pounders and a big common and the big mirror.
Were they? I mean, we know about the common a little bit as well. Were all the fish generally getting caught apart from the common?
No. Well, I mean, the same captures, yes. If fish got caught, they were always recognised because there were so few.
So as a percentage of the fish that got caught out of the population, what was the kind of population that actually did get caught regularly?
Another good question. I don't think there's enough anglers on there or enough captures to sort of say if there's any kind of a pattern, but because certain fish would maybe get caught twice in the summer and then they wouldn't get caught for 2 more years. So I did know, though, that if you caught one, you had a really good chance of catching the big one because the big one probably got caught more than all the rest.
Did it? Yeah. The BCSG side, the British Carp Study Group, it's a bit like the Masons, isn't it?
Yep.
Is it really?
It can be. You know, it's there's, what is there now, 470 odd members in this country and a couple of international members as well. So you can imagine that, like the Masons, that has everybody from firemen to lawyers to sportsmen to musicians to builders to teachers. You know, there's a real ragtag of professions that are involved with a common interest.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get all sorts, you know, but it's been an interesting thing to be involved in the last 10 years.
You've been in there for 10 years.
Or more than that now. 11 years, 12 years, 12 years.
Right. What were you expecting? So what made you want to join?
I think again the history, which was important when we started to know your history of the of carp angling and as such, and the development of carp fishing. It was kind of, learning about what you kind of like your successful forefathers, if you like Hutchinson and McDonald and Kevin Maddox and people like that. You kind of had to, it's a bit like doing the knowledge as a taxi driver. You had to know that as well as you kind of getting your rods sorted out. It's part of a mutual respect thing to do your homework. And so the BCSG was all part of that. My dad was involved in specimen fishing groups in the 70s with some amazing anglers. So it was something that was always, the hallowed BCSG. It really was. And
so did you feel like you were missing something? Talking about what we were mentioning earlier on in the podcast about finding the spirit, and was there a,
to a certain extent, but I think it's a personal aspiration. For me, it's something I always wanted to get into, if not to just, like I was saying before, if you're privy to, if there's a secret there, you want to find out what it is. And that was a little bit like that for me with them. I wouldn't join the Masons, but I wanted to join the BCSG because I just wanted to see what it was like. But I also wanted to do it because it was important when I was learning. So I didn't know how it had changed. It has changed, but not immeasurably. It's had its ups and downs like everything else. But I went there with a half a thought of it being a bit of a formal kind of, plum cake and wine, passion for angling type thing. And I went to the AGM with a box of wine. I just wanted to play it safe. I thought the last thing they're going to want is a drummer turning up with an 80-watt speaker and a load of music and a load of Stella. I thought, I'm going to just play it cool.
Left the leather jacket at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got there and it was carnage. There was 2 electric guitars, amps, people playing Pink Floyd. It was just, I couldn't have got it more wrong, And I thought, this is for me. It's brilliant.
Really?
Yeah.
Straight away?
Yeah. And it's like at court, right opposite Save.
Yeah.
Right in that hotbed. Before we had our 2 newer waters, it was always at Denham. And it is alternately at Denham now, or it will be at our other newer water, Hindles, if HS2 goes ahead, but that's a whole new conversation.
We talked about that a little bit last time. It's just like,
who knows,
whatever.
But but anyway, the point was I got there and the 2 anglers that I've got to know that I'd really respected and as I was learning was 3 was Rod Hutchinson, Rich McDonald and Peter Springate. Peter was always my favourite angler because he fished the type of places that I was more interested in. And we're really close, and that's a real privilege.
Yeah. So you got to. So it lived up to expectations. So what is the criteria for joining the British Carp Study Group nowadays, Si?
It's as it always was. So the stipulation was that you should have been carp fishing for at least 15 years, have proof that you're successful on any given water that you've chosen to fish.
So what is
it
their level of
every water?
What is their level of success? What do they
I guess
term
like
success?
you have a healthy photo album and etc.
I'd be knackered then, wouldn't I?
Yeah. Superimposed.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But I went along with an open mind. I went to the Horse and Barge in Denham, and the old Horse and Barge with Les Smythe, who we sadly lost last year. Dougal was ill, so I had a bit of a touch because I didn't know Dougal then, and I thought
imposing character potentially,
incredibly under the microscope. We get on now, we're good friends, but so I got off quite lightly in my interview, But I did say, is this just carp fishing? Because I did hope that it would be a bit broader. It is what it is, but he said, no, everybody fishes for other things. Well, not everyone, but, the people that I wanted to get to know, like Pete and Dave Ball and Zen and Boyko, all those people, they all fish for tench and, there's I wanted a broad spectrum of angling experience, and there is. So you can be sat there talking about carp all night if you want, but you can equally talk about blue shark fishing or chub fishing or whatever it might be. There's always someone like Gary Newman, who yourself, really interested in fishing for a vast array of things, isn't he, all over the place. But so it was more for that. And Les said, I hope you're not joining because of Korda. And it really threw me because I think I was with Korda at the time, you guys or thereabouts, and And I said, I don't really understand the question. And he said, well, our lake. I said, I didn't know you had a lake, you know. And he said, we've got a lake called Korda, and then obviously the history of why Danny called his company Korda, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no. I said, that's the last thing on my mind, you know. It's literally something I've always wanted to be a part of. So I kind of showed him my fishing pictures like you do, you know, but not just carp. And at the end of it, he shook my hand and said, welcome to the group.
Did he?
And,
that quick?
That was it. So
do you think it's always, is it, so this is 50-year anniversary?
This year, yeah.
This
1969 was when Peter Mohan set it up.
Do you think it's continued? Is it kept its consistency for all those years, or have there been ups and downs along the way?
It nearly went under in the 90s. I can't remember the exact year now. It could mid to around about the mid-90s. I think it was financially in trouble. It was rescued by the existing members, as far as I understand it. And then since the kind of boom of carp fishing, it managed to maintain its membership. So it is out of the public eye, or certainly out of the fishing public eye at the moment, a lot more than it ever used to be, but we still have a healthy membership. So on one hand, arguably, why change it? You know, it is what it is still. If you're interested and you know it's something that you aspire to, then that's cool. On the other hand, I think that the 15-year carp fishing thing is a bit out of date, because you don't have to have been fishing for carp for 15 years to be successful, but you still need a modicum of experience to be respected, to be a member. So there's got to be a middle ground there, I think, somewhere. And I think that it should be on invite from current member to vet someone you know or you think should be a member of the group without having that 15-year blanket requirement.
That system seems to work well, doesn't it? It works well on lakes and everywhere, doesn't it?
Well, I think the kind of, for me, I'd really love to see some younger guys coming in. You know,
you've not got many young members at the moment.
Not really. The youngest guy we've got is about 33, 34 maybe.
God.
You know, it's an ageing group, you know, because of that history. You know, 20, 30 years ago.
God, you'll be celebrating like golden jubilees and stuff.
Well, you know, it's no, like Dave Gawthorne was saying to me, you know, at the 60th, he's going to be here, you know, and it's a good point. You don't want to think like that, you know, it's a bit macabre and whatnot, but it's reality.
Has it still got, do you think it still potentially can play an influential role in carp fishing?
100%. It's a shame that it's become a bit introverted, but by the nature of specimen groups, it tends to be the way. You know, the perch fishers is no different. The chub study group's probably even more introverted. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just the way those groups operate, you know. They have their own magazines like we do, but it's group specific. You know, the new one we brought out, I did float the idea of putting it out as a general release, you know, but it wasn't popular, so you have to respect that. So it's good that it's a closed group of anglers that have got there through experience. That's a good thing, you know, but I would like to see a slight change to enable people to be vetted by current members, because I think the whole process these days puts people off. You know, we're in an age now where people won't read a paper from front to back, you know, they might just look at the pictures. So I think you have to make it a little bit more accessible for the culture that we live in, if that makes sense, but without retaining the credibility of it.
But it's a good point with the book, though, wasn't it? I mean, so the group are quite they're quite firm about not releasing that book to general public. I mean, is that not a way of you know, just showing some awareness? You know, a lot of people just don't know anything about the group, do they? I
don't really know any other way of getting it out there apart from doing this kind of thing right now. You know, the fact that I've become editor for the magazine this year has to be a positive thing for attracting newer members if people are aware and enjoyed what I did in Subsurface, because don't forget, what I did in Subsurface was only a fraction compared to what Gaz did. You know, I say it's our thing, but it's really Gaz's, you know. Got to make that clear. But the approach to that is very similar. It's just a high quality, you know, what we've done this year is a high quality, really good images, great stories, decent layout. We just thought about the presentation a bit more, and that's why they asked me. So hopefully I've managed to do that, and I would hope, like I say, once people get to know about it or refamiliarise themselves with it, they'll get that magazine, and then it'll it might spark a bit more of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet your dad would be proud, wouldn't he? Like, being in all those groups when he was young.
He'd never tell me that.
He wouldn't tell you. No,
but
I'm sure
I took it. I haven't taken him the book yet because it was we did 100 hardbacks, of which Craig Stannard did the drawing on the front and the drawing on the back. So I had Peter Mowen on the cover and Rod Hutchinson on the back because it meant a lot to me to pay tribute to him in this one. I didn't know
there's
Rod
a good
well.
trip. You didn't know, yeah.
Not very well, but he had an enormous influence on my fishing, through Carp Strikes Back, still my favourite book. That whole attitude towards fishing has never changed for me. He got it right, the perfect balance, I think, between enjoyment and successful fishing, because it's fun. It has to be fun. Where's the fun gone, It can't be too serious. What's the point of that?
How? Yeah.
Anyways, getting back to the point, I did a big tribute to Rod in there, and I got some people who'd never, Michael Curly Hatchman, who famously had the car in the ditch in the Carp Strikes Back. I wrangled with him to get, Curly could talk. If you did a podcast with Curly, you need a week. And if he could only write like that, by his own admission. So in the end, I had to give him some questions, and it worked. I gave him a questionnaire about Rod, and it did the trick, and he got a really good piece out of Curly, Got Sean Jarvis on the early bait developments at Woldview, that kind of thing. Chris Ball, a good group of anglers. Peter Springate talking about Rod's funeral as it goes. So it was important. Julian Cundiff did a little bit in there as well. So I had a great little bit for Rod. There's a tribute to the 70s. I wanted some historical stuff in there for obvious reasons. So I was going to do a reproduced chapter from each magazine covering each decade of the group. Wow. But when I looked at the 70s, there was that many incredible, forward-thinking anglers. I just had to keep it to the 70s. So I had Jack Hilton, Fred Wilton, Rod Hutchinson, Chris Yates, Dick Walker. How can you choose one from that? So I had to just do them and do them alone. And then the rest there's a bit of a technical section, not really much. It wasn't really the place to do it for this particular edition, but some really good stories across the decades, both old and new. So, and I'm really proud of it. I kind of
you were
made
around
me
at
cry
the right
when
time.
I saw it. I just couldn't believe it when I got it in my hand. It sounds a bit dramatic, but to sort of put in thousands of hours into something and then see a box full of them. And I think
how many did you publish?
500 softbacks and 100 hardbacks. And I think because of my dad's illness and all of the history of that, to actually get that in my hands at the end of it was a special thing.
Oh, I've got a picture of it right here.
Have you? Oh, that'd be good, Tobe.
Let me see.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh yeah, that's the hardback. So that's Peter that Craig Stannard drew. Really nice. And
no, it's
yeah,
great.
we got Rod on the back. We don't forget to smell the hops along the way instead of the roses, as he famously once said.
Famous line.
Yeah. So it was kind of
when carp fishing's not going very well, just remember that quote.
Go to the pub, yeah,
go to the pub.
But so I'm putting together the next one now. I've got most of the material, but I'm procrastinating really well with that. Yeah, I've got halfway through one article. I've got it all there ready to go. I think it's just it took so much out of me to do this one that I'm kind of, I know how Gaz felt now. When he was contemplating the next journal. Because it's a big amount
That's
of work.
That's a mounty hill in front of you, isn't it?
It's huge.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of critics out there, Yeah. But to be fair, like music, if you get it right in your own mind, it doesn't matter what anyone else says. But if you leave one stone unturned that's niggling,
it will niggle you.
And someone makes a comment, you never forget it. So you have to be happy with it yourself. Take criticism, of course, negative or positive. But I think if that's your job to produce that thing, then and you do it as well as you can do it, then that's it, isn't it? The line is drawn.
It was as good as you could do it on your watch, anyway. So, I'm just going to quote that line that you said at the start. What is it? It's good to have an end to a journey, but it's a journey that matters in the end. That's a good quote, isn't it?
For everything in life, surely.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see. Well, it stays in your mind, doesn't it? You can quote that one over and over, so it means something. So, where's your journey going, Si? Where do you see yourself in, in the next year or 20 years or 30 years?
God knows. Working less for a start, right up the top of the list.
Really?
You know?
Yeah.
I was never really cut out for it. I seem to manage to be busy as hell all the time. But no, seriously, I don't know really. I mean, I think London's finite. You know, I've been in London for a long time now, and I love it. But the longer that I'm there, the harder it is to justify being short of space when I could have somewhere that's much more convenient. So I rent a storage unit for my fishing tackle, so I have to go to pick it up there and drop it off there before I go home. So even just having a garage would be amazing. I mean, it's so ridiculous, but I look at people with garages, you know, and it's like they've won the pools or something, you know. It's like, look at that garage, you know.
Yeah.
How good would that be? So that's definitely
So,
one of the
anywhere in
things.
mind?
Well, I'm a Midlander, so I flirted with the coast a couple of times, but it's not really, you know, I think I'd have to go back to Warwickshire, but not Coventry, I have to say. That's been and gone. I think it'd be not too far, Leamington or possibly Stratford or Birmingham, you know, somewhere. But I think it needs to be semi-rural, if not completely rural. I'm quite keen for that.
Your
But
wife, your wife, she's
same, you know. She's keen on Leamington because she likes the Georgian nature of Richmond, you know. So she doesn't want to kind of move from somewhere that she feels inspired to go to somewhere less inspiring,
Right.
which is understandable. I get that. I'm totally with that. But I think we've got a few years left in us yet.
right.
You know, maybe another 4 or 5 years, and we'll start thinking. Who knows? Depends what happens with Dad. Depends what happens with the house, and there's loads of other things that are going to be happening in life that happens to everybody eventually in life that I'm not particularly prepared for. But I'm sure I'll, you know, you
But that's
deal with it.
potentially where you'd like to be anyway.
I think so. I'd like to be. I mean, ideally, I'd love to be retired in 5 years' time. I can't imagine teaching. You know, towards my later years, it's too much. You know, I mean, and I don't want to be management either. I've done that and I didn't like it. It wasn't for me. So teaching in schools has got it's got a lifespan. You know, at the moment, but I don't know where it'll.
And what about the journey with the band as well? Because that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. We're touring soon.
Yeah.
So we've had our new EP out. We're always kind of assessing, you know, where we're at, because so much as it's great fun, it's hugely time consuming. So you have to be brutally honest about, is it going to work? You know, if we live next door to each other, and it wasn't the sort of like the big car journeys to rehearse and the expensive touring and recording, etc., and just the time that it takes, it might be a bit easier. But I think you have to be brutally honest and say that if nothing happens before a certain amount of time, you have to stop and either do something else or step back. And I've kind of done it, and I've loved it. I'd rather be a part of a collective as a musician. I think a lot of my old friends do that now. You know, they've got grab bags of people they can pull from here, there, and everywhere, just to keep the creative juices flowing. So you're still playing and you're still recording stuff, just not necessarily all the time. But I'm really missing fishing at the moment. I've got to say, I kind of cut myself really thin this year with the book and the magazine, the band, and the guiding. So I haven't really had any time to myself, and I'm really feeling it, I have to say, you know, to the kind of point where I'm a bit you know, I'm getting a bit, but it's okay. You just have to relax and think, right, this is what it is now. And we've always said before that the fish will always be there. Might not necessarily be the same ones, but you know, some of the lakes that we run, fortunately we've got a young stock that are going through the roof. Yeah. So, you know, that's great, you know, just give it a couple of years. You know, yeah. But I don't know, mate, is the simple answer to that. I'm useless at planning ahead.
Well, you might be able to listen to this podcast afterwards, or, you know, like 20 years' time, listen back and think, right, okay,
that'd be nice.
Be interesting.
That'd probably be the first opportunity I get the time to do it.
Yeah, maybe. Actually, one last thing, because you're. I know that you like collecting books and stuff, don't you? All that, and I think you said to me that your dad said to you that he pointed out a picture to you, didn't he? And he said that would be the most cherished picture of all your pictures. Do you know which picture I mean?
That was actually Tony Moore.
Right.
big tone.
Right.
And when I was 17, he sold me some Cardinal 155s.
Right.
It was all I could afford because the ambidextrous ones were more expensive,
Yeah.
but they were all right, you know. I was a bit disappointed he'd peeled the stickers off, but it was, you know, it was what it was. And anyway, he came round and he was looking through my album, and there's a great picture of me and my dad.
Yeah.
And he's over my shoulder in Devon with his finger on that was my dad's signature. He'd always have his finger on the spool when he was float fishing because he used to use Mitchell matches.
Mm.
So he'd always be finger on the bail arm and stuff like that, or trying to control the float.
Mm.
And I don't know how old I was exactly. It was a crazy day, but we got hideously lost. Army helicopters, you name it. We had the works. But he said that'll be your most treasured picture, and I didn't understand that.
Mm. Mm.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
At the time,
Yeah.
but but he was right. You know, I've kind of go
Yeah.
back to that picture quite a lot, and I'm sure
Yeah.
I will in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be. All right, Simon Hartop, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
The Thinking Tackle Podcast.